Late September, deep inside the dense jungles of Mexico, something extraordinary was uncovered. American intelligence had located what they described as a billion-dollar drug empire, a fortified laboratory hidden beneath layers of trees and concrete. It wasn't just another cartel hideout. This site had the capacity to manufacture industrial-scale fentanyl, enough to flood entire cities across the United States. The revelation stunned Washington and set off a chain of decisions that would cross political, legal, and even national boundaries. How did the United States find a target so well hidden? And what made it decide that this time, diplomacy was no longer enough? Before we uncover how this hidden empire was exposed and destroyed, make sure to subscribe to Military Power to follow the operations shaping America's security today. For 6 months, a small heat signature on a satellite image grew into a clear picture. Analysts did not rush. They layered sensors and repeated observations until the pattern proved consistent. High-altitude two flights supplied wide-area photos every week and showed thermal clusters that returned each night. Drones filled the gaps with video and close-in views of movement. That steady imaging turned scattered signals into a mapped site. Field teams supported the aerial picture with discrete sensors. Small chemical monitors were placed at likely entry routes to test for volatile compounds used in processing. Acoustic sensors recorded the regular beat of machines and generators. Those devices picked up sounds that matched industrial processing rather than seasonal or casual activity. Every sensor hit was checked against the aerial imagery to rule out false leads. Signals intelligence added another layer of proof. Intercepts and metadata showed the rhythm of guard rotations and supply movements. Traffic between coastal pickup points and inland caches suggested a relay system. Vehicles stopped at remote staging areas where cargo transferred to lighter loads for the final leg. That relay explained why there were no main roads leading to the complex and why the site had been hidden from routine patrols. The compiled data matured into a working blueprint. More than 40 nodes were cataloged and given priority tags. Command posts sat on ridgelines. Storage silos clustered near power generators. Small clearings served as landing strips and transfer fields. Footpaths threaded between bunkers and processing halls, buried under a canopy that gave the site natural concealment. The map showed permanence and investment rather than a temporary camp. That level of detail changed the way planners thought about response. Knowing exact entry points and hard infrastructure allowed options beyond blunt interdiction. Planners could target critical nodes with precision and plan approaches that reduced risks to non-combatants. Interagency work made the mapping possible. Military reconnaissance, federal law enforcement, intelligence services, and foreign partners each provided pieces. Liaison officers moved data between agencies so a single update could shift the whole operational picture. Risk teams ran scenarios that tested whether kinetic options would create disproportionate diplomatic fallout. Those simulations shaped the narrow windows when action might be considered viable. The mapping effort left 2 clear facts. First, this was a fortified production center built for longevity. Second, once the facility could be seen and described in detail, decision-makers had to move from asking where the lab was to asking how to remove it without sparking an international crisis. That choice would define policy. The decision to employ the F-15E Strike Eagle came from a clear operational need. Planners needed an aircraft that could carry heavy ordnance, sustain long transit legs, and deliver effects against reinforced concrete. Stealth fighters reduce detection, but their internal bays limit size and number of munitions. For a compound with subterranean spaces, the mission demanded payload and range rather than invisibility. Payload capacity drove the choice. The Strike Eagle can carry a varied load on external hardpoints that includes precision-guided small-diameter bombs and bunker-busting munitions. That mix let planners shape effects. Lighter guided weapons were reserved for ventilation and processing modules, while heavier penetrators targeted storage and underground chambers. Delivering enough destructive power in a single pass reduced the need for repeat strikes. Range and endurance favored the Eagle. The site lay deep inside hostile airspace, and missions required long legs to the target and a secure return. The F-15E has internal fuel capacity and accepts external tanks which extend time on station. That endurance reduced the need for aerial refueling and lowered exposure. It also allowed flexibility to hold or adjust timing when final intelligence checks arrived. Electronic attack and deception underpinned the plan. Rather than rely solely on passive stealth planners, chose active suppression. Electronic warfare pods and escort assets created localized radar denial and generated false returns. Expendable decoys supplemented jamming to overload operators with ambiguous contacts. This approach let heavy aircraft operate with reduced risk while denying defenders the situational awareness needed to respond. Weapon selection followed a layered effects model. Each aircraft was assigned 2 precision-guided small-diameter bombs for surgical hits with limited collateral harm. Heavier penetration weapons accompanied parts of the formation to collapse, harden structures, and sever power. Timing and sequencing aimed to open targets with initial impacts and allow follow-on strikes to destroy internal systems. Training and rehearsal aligned aircrew and support teams to the mission profile. Crews practiced low-altitude ingress, waypoint transitions, and synchronous weapon release in high-fidelity simulators. Electronic warfare crews rehearsed jamming sequences against representative radar signatures. These rehearsals reduced uncertainty and raised the chance that the strike would achieve its designed effect in a single, tightly controlled window. Planners envisioned a formation of 12 Strike Eagles, carrying a total of 24 precision-guided munitions, mainly small diameter bombs for accuracy and a few heavy penetrators for hardened targets. Mission timing would be synchronized with final ISR updates, so strikes hit confirmed coordinates. With aircraft selected and load out, finalized planners moved into execution. The choice of the Eagle signaled the intended scale and resolve. Everything else flowed from that single decisive decision. Before first light, 12 F-15E aircraft left their base under strict radio discipline, bound for the Sinaloa jungle. The window for action was narrow, and planners built the sortie around a single moment of opportunity. Takeoff was scheduled at 2 a.m., and the formation followed low and winding routes that hugged terrain to reduce radar exposure. Pilots relied on pre-planned waypoints and encrypted data links rather than continuous voice chatter. This approach reduced the chance that routine air traffic would reveal the formation before it reached the objective. Navigation emphasized low observable movement rather than platform invisibility. The jets maintained altitude corridors threading between ridgelines and over river valleys. Sensors aboard each aircraft updated position, fixes against the most recent intelligence feeds. Unmanned ISR platforms and a high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft provided last-minute confirmations of thermal signatures and guard patterns. When the target image aligned with the flight plan, commanders prepared for the final sequence. As the formation closed, the crew entered the T-3-minute phase. Targeting pods locked on pre-designated aim points and mission systems cross-checked coordinates from multiple sensors. Electronic attack assets executed planned jamming cycles to deny effective airspace surveillance. Pilots saw a consistent thermal pattern on their displays, and the mission commander verified the lack of civilian movement in surrounding clearings. The rules were strict, and any unexpected activity required immediate abort authority from the mission commander. At T-1 minute, the weapons were armed and release interlocks were checked. Flight leads confirmed clearance and recited final timing protocols. Then a single command moved through the formation with the weight of weeks of preparation. Execute orders began the synchronized drop sequence. Weapons separated and followed ballistic paths invisible to the naked eye. The delivery was designed to make the strike sudden and decisive, and to leave defenders no time to coordinate a response. 24 munitions fell in coordinated waves across the complex. The first impacts targeted storage tanks and generator bays to create cascading failures. Follow-on effects struck processing modules and hardened enclosures. The chosen weapon set emphasized precision to limit collateral damage while producing catastrophic effects within the compound. No visible contrails marked the attack, and people on the ground had only seconds to react. In the minutes that followed, cameras recorded fire and collapsing structures. Communications that had once coordinated supply and defense went silent or became confused. The formation turned away on pre-planned egress routes and climbed to safer altitudes. As the smoke of the explosions drifted over the Sinaloa jungle, a larger question began to rise in Washington. Who had authorized the strike, and how had that decision been made across the fragile lines of law and diplomacy? Inside Washington, the final decision unfolded not in the chaos of battle, but within the quiet gravity of power. The intelligence was conclusive, the threat denied, yet the path forward divided the government. Within the Department of Justice, concerns center on legality. Officials warned that a cross-border military strike, even against a criminal organization, risked violating international law and Mexico's sovereignty. They argued that such an act could set a difficult precedent to control in the future, inviting diplomat backlash from allies and adversaries alike. Across the river at the Pentagon, the tone was markedly different. Defense leaders view the cartel not as a criminal group, but as a paramilitary force commanding vast resources, advanced weaponry, and international networks. For them, the debate was not about legality, but necessity. Allowing such an operation to continue, they reasoned, endangered American citizens as directly as any state hostile. Intelligence from the CIA supports this view, revealing how cartel facilities had evolved beyond simple production sites into fortified compounds capable of resisting traditional law enforcement. The National Security Council compiles the evidence, presenting it to the Oval Office as a matter of national defense. The president faces a choice that blurs the boundary between counterterrorism and criminal justice. After days of deliberation, he signed an order that redefined the conflict entirely. Drug cartels were officially designated as foreign terrorist organizations, placing them in the same legal category as global extremist movements. This classification grants the military full authority to engage with them using advanced force extending beyond the jurisdiction of conventional law enforcement. The decision marks a historic shift. For the first time, America's war on drugs was formally militarized, merging the tools of intelligence, surveillance, and precision air power into a single command structure. The implications were vast. Military assets could now strike targets outside the United States under the framework of counterterrorism, while financial networks tied to the cartels faced automatic sanctions and seizure. The move also sent a warning to governments quietly tolerating cartel activity within their borders. The era of limited responses had ended, yet even as the order went into effect, unease lingered in diplomatic circles. Mexico's sovereignty stands at the heart of every concern. Analysts fear that a direct strike could political outrage, strain trade relations, ignite, and complicate cooperation in future security operations. But within Washington, the calculation was clear. The threat had crossed a threshold, and hesitation carried greater risk than action. With the signature now inked, the course is set. The United States had given itself the green light. Diplomacy became the next battlefield. After the intelligence picture solidified, Washington faced the question of how to act without tearing apart relations with its southern neighbor. The United States had leverage, and it was willing to use it. Officials in Washington linked economic policy to security cooperation, warning that inaction would come with real financial consequences. Behind closed doors, negotiators made it clear that tariffs of 25% could be imposed on over $400 billion in Mexican exports if the government refused to confront the cartels. The message was direct, and it reached every level of the Mexican administration. Publicly, Mexico rejected the pressure. Leaders in Mexico City emphasized sovereignty and framed the issue as an internal matter. They spoke of the need to defend national dignity and to prevent a return to the days when foreign powers acted unilaterally inside Latin America. The speeches were firm, but they also signaled awareness of the danger. Behind the public statements, a different conversation took place. Mexican intelligence and security services began to share data with American counterparts. Satellite imagery, cell phone intercepts, and lists of cartel leadership circulated through secure channels. The cooperation was discreet but effective. Information flowed from field agents to joint task forces that were now able to track movements, funding routes, and command nodes with new precision. The collaboration marked a turning point. While diplomats argued in front of cameras, intelligence officers built the trust needed for real operational coordination. That quiet partnership produced immediate results. In a single night, 29 cartel figures were captured and flown to the United States under sealed extradition orders. The speed of the operation stunned observers who had watched previous extradition processes drag on for years. The arrests disrupted cartel communications and reduced their ability to organize a response to the coming strike. It also bought Mexico time to demonstrate cooperation without publicly admitting involvement in the American plan. Diplomacy had reached its limit. The political debate gave way to the logic of operations. With legal and intelligence groundwork complete, and with Mexico's silent approval secured, the Pentagon moved from planning to execution. The date and hour of the strike were set, and the preparation began with military precision. In less than 10 seconds, the production complex stopped being a roofed facility and became a furnace. The first impacts were surgical and brutal. In the opening 3 seconds, precision munitions struck the upper chambers and metal roofs of processing halls. Penetrators carved through reinforced concrete and detonated chemical storage that had been shielded from view. Those initial explosions created massive flash fires that illuminated the canopy and sent heat skyward. By the 4th and 5th seconds, a chain reaction had taken hold. Burning chemicals ignited nearby generator stations and fuel depots. Secondary blasts hammered support infrastructure and severed power lines that kept processing alive. The loss of controlled ventilation turned contained fires into wide-spreading infernos. Smoke and shockwaves tore through guard positions while communications equipment failed under the thermal load. Between the 6th and 10th second, the compound lost structural integrity. Roofs fell inward, and subterranean spaces collapsed as overpressure and fire undermined concrete supports. The scene became a field of mud, steel, and ash, where once there had been conveyor belts, distillation columns, and packed drums. Flames towered above the tree line, and the heat signature registered on satellites as an open, moving source that made further approach dangerous for nearby teams. Damage assessment in the immediate aftermath was approximate but stark. Large volumes of precursor chemicals were incinerated. Critical pieces of industrial equipment that would take years to replace were destroyed. Analysts estimated losses in equipment, stockpiles, and infrastructure that could reach into the billions of dollars. Those sums reflected more than lost property. They represented the sudden removal of production capacity that supplied networks far beyond the local region. Operationally, the strike achieved a key tactical effect. Radio traffic that had once coordinated convoys and guarded schedules dissolved into static and fragmented messages. Field commanders could not assemble a coherent response. Supply lines stalled as drivers abandoned vehicles and dropped loads to escape fires and breaking command structures. The immediate paralysis bought time for follow-on law enforcement and intelligence actions to exploit the disruption. So the human toll was complex to assess on first view, because the assault targeted hardened industrial spaces. In the hours after the strike, the priority for responders was containment and evidence preservation. The destruction of documents and drives complicated immediate prosecution efforts, even as physical archives were burned. The spectacle of rapid destruction delivered a strategic message. The physical loss was great and immediate, yet the symbolic impact extended. Networks that believed geography would protect them learned that technology and precision could remove sanctuary in a matter of seconds. When the smoke cleared, a different contest would begin, not of flames, but of politics and law. The strike did not end with the fire. Its political and social impact rippled far beyond the jungle. Within hours, Mexico summoned the American ambassador and issued a formal protest condemning the violation of sovereignty. Yet behind closed doors, senior security officials admitted that a significant threat had been removed. The contradiction reflected Mexico's position between public outrage and private relief. For many inside its defense establishment, the destruction of the cartel complex was a blow they could not have delivered alone. The international reaction was measured but intense. In Europe and Asia, defense analysts began treating the operation as a case study in modern deterrence. They focused on how precision bombing, intelligence fusion, and electronic warfare combined to neutralize a non-state actor operating inside a sovereign state. The discussion spread through academic and policy circles, raising questions about how far nations might go in the name of cross-border security. For America's allies, the event became both an example and a warning. On the ground, the social effect was immediate. Communities along the border reported a rare sense of safety as trafficking routes fell silent. Local networks fractured and morale among cartel fighters collapsed. Some abandoned strongholds while others sought protection through surrender. For residents long trapped between fear and lawlessness, the strike represented a symbolic shift. Strategically, the operation set a precedent. It marked the first time the United States used frontline air power against a cartel target. The message was unmistakable. The war on drugs had crossed a new threshold defined by intelligence, technology, and decisive force. Do you believe decisive military action is the only way to end cartel terror, or should diplomacy still lead the way? Share your opinion in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to Military Power for more in-depth analyses and frontline stories that reveal how technology, intelligence, and strategy are reshaping global security today.